You see meditation everywhere these days, right? It's on our phones, it's in corporate wellness programs, it's just all over the place. But with all that hype, there's also a ton of confusion. So what is it really? Is it a spiritual thing, a science-backed tool for chilling out, or something else entirely? Let's untangle that question together.
The question seems so simple, but the answer, well, it's not. If you go and ask 10 different people what meditation is, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. And you know what's wild? They might all be right in their own way.
So when you hear the word meditation, what image pops into your head? Is it a Hindu Swami, deep in contemplation? Maybe a Buddhist monk, sitting perfectly still? Or a Taoist master doing something like Qigong? These are all classic images for sure. But here's the thing. Each one of those represents a totally different tradition, with a different goal and a different method. And that's exactly why this is so hard to pin down.
So which one is it? Well, the answer turns out to be, yeah, all of the above. Meditation can be a religious act, it can be a way to relax, and it can be a super intense mental workout. This variety is precisely why a single, simple definition has always been so tricky.
Okay, so let's tackle this definition problem head-on. Why is it so ridiculously hard to agree on what we even mean when we say the word meditation?
Well, for starters, there's just no single, universally accepted scientific definition. The word meditation is this huge umbrella that covers everything from silent sitting to chanting your heart out. And what's really crucial to get is that these techniques aren't just standalone exercises. They're often woven deep into entire systems of belief. Think about it. For a monk in a monastery, meditation isn't just a 10-minute app session. It's one piece of a whole way of life, completely connected to their community, their ethics, everything.
But even with all those challenges, researchers have started to find some common ground. Instead of trying to find one single thing, they started to see meditation as a family of practices. And what's the family resemblance? They're all about self-regulation. Basically, they are all methods for training your attention and your awareness, so you can bring your own thoughts and feelings under more voluntary control, instead of just being yanked around by them all day.
So, if meditation is a family of practices for training attention, how does that training actually work? This is where it gets really interesting. It turns out you can boil down most techniques to two fundamental styles, and I love this analogy for it: the spotlight and the floodlight.
Let's start with the spotlight. Focused attention meditation is exactly what it sounds like. You voluntarily aim the spotlight of your mind onto one specific thing and try to keep it there. That thing could be your breath, a feeling of kindness, a candle flame, a mantra, anything really. Your mind will wander, of course, and the training is just gently bringing that spotlight back, again and again. Then you have the floodlight. Open monitoring is the total opposite. Instead of a narrow beam of focus, you switch on a giant floodlight of awareness. You just notice everything that pops into your experience, thoughts, sounds, body sensations, without grabbing onto any of it. You're just watching the whole show.
And you can see these two basic styles show up in traditions all over the world. For focused attention, the spotlight, you've got things like Hindu mantra meditation, the Buddhist practice of focusing on the breath, known as samatha, or even the repetition of the Jesus prayer in some Christian traditions. For open monitoring, the floodlight, the most famous example is probably vipassana, which is often what people mean by mindfulness. But you also see it in the Zen practice of shikantaza, or just sitting, and in practices of self-inquiry that explore awareness itself.
All right, now that we have that framework, the spotlight and the floodlight, let's zoom out. Let's take a quick tour to see how these practices have traveled across the globe and through history, from their ancient roots all the way to our modern world.
Man, the journey is just incredible. The earliest written records we have go way back to the Upanishads in ancient India. From there, it became this absolute cornerstone of Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. But it wasn't just happening in the East. You see similar contemplative techniques pop up in the Abrahamic faiths. Think Kabbalah in Judaism, Hesychism in Christianity, and Dhikr in Sufi Islam. For the West, a huge turning point was the 1893 World Parliament of Religions in Chicago. This was a really big deal. But the real explosion? That came in the 1960s, which lit the fuse for the widespread interest we see today.
And that brings us right up to today, where the story of meditation has taken another wild turn. It's moved from a practice you'd find in monasteries and ashrams to something you find in offices and clinics.
And just to give you a sense of the scale here, a national survey way back in 2012 found that 8% of adults in the US were meditating. That's about 18 million people at the time. It's safe to say it's no longer some niche activity. It has gone completely mainstream.
A huge driver of this growth has been the explosion of secular applications. These ancient techniques have essentially been taken out of their original religious contexts and adopted for all sorts of new purposes. We now see them everywhere, in psychotherapy, in hospitals to help people manage pain, at major companies like Google, and even in schools and the military to help with focus and stress control.
But what does the science actually say about all this? In this last section, let's take a look at the documented benefits, the potential risks, because yes, there are risks, and the ultimate question of what meditation is really for.
Okay, this is really, really important to understand. This practice can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, research points to some pretty significant benefits, right? Things like reducing stress, anxiety, and pain, and even physically lowering your heart rate. But there's another side. Meditation can also trigger some really challenging or even negative effects, like new anxiety, feelings of unreality, or distorted thoughts. And this isn't some new discovery by modern science. These experiences have been documented for centuries within the traditions themselves. They even have names for them, like Zen sickness or demonic states.
As one scholar, C. Pierce Salguero, puts it, these kinds of problematic experiences aren't some modern side effect. They are, in his words, quite well known and well documented across traditions. This just really highlights how important it is to have proper guidance if you're going to dive into this stuff, especially if you're doing intensive practice.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway? Well, maybe the best way to think about meditation isn't as something that's automatically good or relaxing, but simply as a powerful tool. It's a method for training your own mind. And just like any tool, its effect depends entirely on how you use it and what you're using it for. So the real question isn't just what meditation is, but what are you going to train your mind for?